Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to my video on how to calculate confidence interval using Microsoft Excel. So I have here an Excel worksheet that has a calculator that I've already built for computing the confidence interval. I'm going to show you each stage how I designed the functions. So in column A, I have some fictitious data. Let's say it's from a depression inventory, and it's 50 scores. And we want to build a confidence interval around these 50 values, these 50 scores. So we have to start with some statistics that we'll need for the confidence interval. So we'll start with the mean. And you can see I already have a function here that calculates it. I'm going to build the same function next to it to show you how it's done. You start equal sign, and in Excel the mean is average. We're going to want A2, and then a shortcut here is Control Shift down arrow. And that'll take you all the way to the end of the range, which you can see is A51. Then click Enter, and you can see I have the average for this data set, and it's 50.9. Next, we'll calculate the sample standard deviation, which in Excel is stdev.s. And same thing, we'll select A2, and then Control Shift down arrow, and hit Enter, and you can see it's the same value, 8.21. Now there is a function in Excel to calculate the population standard deviation, but you'd have to apply that to the population. We're working with just a sample here. So in this case, since we often don't know the population standard deviation, we don't have access to all the data for a population, I have just put the value 9 as a standard deviation, just so we have a value to work with, to show you how to build a confidence interval. Then we have sample size. I want to calculate that. Now we know it's 50, but we still need the value to be somewhere, and it's better to have it calculated than to just type it in, because if you add data, then the value won't change if it's not a function. And this is count, and then just select A, because it's the entire column, and you have 50 values there. Now the alpha is not calculated. We set the alpha. In counseling and in most social science type applications, the alpha is 0.05, so I will use 0.05. So now let's look at the confidence interval, and the first calculation will be based on the sample standard deviation. So in Excel, it'll be confidence.t. So use this when you're using a sample standard deviation. And you can see it's looking for 3 arguments: the alpha, the standard deviation, and the size. So if you hold Control, it's a shortcut to put the comma in. First we'll select the alpha, which is in range E10 here. Then the sample standard deviation, which is E5. And then the sample size. Hit Enter, and you can see it's the same value, 2.33. Now if you did know the population standard deviation, you could calculate the confidence interval based on that as a different function. It's confidence.norm. But the rest of the procedure is the same. Hold Control and select the alpha, and of course the standard deviation, you'd select the population standard deviation, and then the sample size. You can see it's the same value I have here. So then we move to calculate the upper limit and the lower limit of the confidence interval. So to calculate the upper limit, you simply take the mean and add the confidence interval to it. You can see it's the same value there. And for the lower limit, you would take the mean and subtract the confidence interval value. Now notice I've done this for the sample standard deviation only and not the population. So these limits, the upper and lower limit, are based on the sample standard deviation. And then down here I use a longer function, which I'm not going to reproduce, but it's a sentence builder, and it tells you there's a 95% chance the true mean is between 48.57, which is the lower limit, and 53.23, which is the upper limit. And you can see in the function how I did this. The 95% chance, I simply derive that from 1 minus 0.05 times 100. That gives you the 95. And then these text functions were just to format the values of the upper and lower limit. So only two values to the right of the decimal are displayed. So this last sentence is really what we're looking for in this Excel worksheet. There's a 95% chance the true mean is between 48.57 and 53.23. Now we can change the alpha, and it'll change the confidence interval, and of course the upper and lower limits. So I'll start by deleting the functions I added in. Let's take a look at the alpha. It's set at 0.05 or 5%. So we'll adjust it to 0.01. And you can see now that it changed this to a 99% chance. And it expanded the confidence interval. The confidence interval is larger now. So there's a 99% chance the true mean is between 47.79 and 54.01. So this makes sense. As you increase the percentage chance, the confidence interval is going to expand. Now usually, as I mentioned in social sciences, we're going to use 5%. There's not too many instances where we would deviate from that. But I want you to understand how changing the alpha changes the probability and how that affects the confidence interval. I hope you found this video helpful. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact me, and I'll be happy to assist you.